What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR. Sitting across from me this week and every week, falling, floating, flying. What's next? It's Desra.
Falling with style. And sitting across from me is Brian Paul.
And every week on Why We Love PlayStation VR, we dip into the PSVR archive. We blow the dust off an old PlayStation VR game. We take a look and see if it's been given any love by the developers, any DLC, any patches, any updates, and then we tell you if it's worth your time. Hey, I got it right.
Yay.
That being said, Desra, what game did we decide to play this week?
This week we're talking about virtual reality.
It's easy to get stuck in this game. Virtual reality, aka VVR, as it shall be henceforth referred to, by Tender Claws, released May 21st, 2019 for $19.99.
Yes.
Just a heads up, it's currently on sale until I believe September 3rd for like $15 for Plus members.
So we'll talk about that later. But yes, it's on sale.
Hey, did you just give up the ghost?
No.
All right, Des, what kind of game is VVR?
It's virtual reality.
Okay, sure. First glance, I got to say though, last week we talked about Along Together.
Yes.
And we couldn't help ourselves from comparing it to Moss.
That's correct.
And I think as unfair as that comparison was, it was something you have to do. And I think this week we have to compare VVR to games like Job Simulator.
It very much feels like that at first. It feels like someone took Job Simulator and kind of crammed it into the Portal universe.
Yeah.
You know, it has like the Portal aesthetic. There is the same kind of darkish humor that's going on, but it's also bright colors and, well, basically you're being given jobs to do.
Yeah, and it just feels like one of those things where you're picking things up and throwing them and just, hey, let's see if we can get a reaction by doing something.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think he kind of nailed it. I think it goes even further than the mechanics about picking things up and playing with them and messing with them and seeing what you can do. It does go as far as what you're saying to say these are different jobs that you're doing. In fact, your lobby screen, I guess you'd call it, your home base of operations. You look up and there's a wall just like hovering there with, I think 9 by 9, so like 81 squares of what seems to be what you think the rest of this game is going to be. Where in the future, I forget how this goes. I think humans are employed to entertain AI.
Basically, yeah. So AI, I don't know. They never really quite go as far as saying like AI has taken over the world or anything like that. But AI is basically done all the jobs. Yeah. And they keep humans around to basically do all jobs for them. And not only that, like you're rated on your jobs just like you would be if you were an Uber or Lyft driver. They actually like the grid you were talking about. Right. You know, if you actually click on it, it has a review and like stars on how good of a job you did for the AI.
So every time you get a new job, you basically are given a virtual reality headset, and you grab it and throw it on your face, and you're transported to another world, just like VR does.
Yeah,
I got the impression right away that this was the whole game. It was like, hey, you're gonna be playing basically mini games, and you're gonna be rated on how well you did, and then you're gonna get sent back, and then play another mini game, and get sent back and play another mini game. And at first, I was entertained by this idea. But then I was like, this is going to get old really fast.
Yeah.
And the game sort of pulls the rug out from under you midway through this process.
Pretty quickly, yeah. This is definitely one of the games we're going to have to tread carefully to avoid getting into spoiler territory. Because I think one of the things I like about this game is it does do this pull the rug out from under you. Things change. Things go in a very different direction than you might be expecting. And I don't want to quite ruin that.
Yeah, we don't want to ruin that at all.
But before we go into that, you mentioned you grab the headset and put it on. There's one thing here I really want to point out is the physics in this game are really satisfying. They have basically you don't really just kind of like click and pick up an object.
Right.
You sort of have like a tether that you kind of grab, and like other games, you can zoom it in and zoom it out. But what's really cool is there's a kind of a delay in the physics. So the more massive something is, you can move it, but it just takes a little more effort. It moves more slowly.
Right.
But then you can also build up momentum and really like fling things. And especially in that first loading screen, it's pretty much infinite space. So you can just grab random objects in the environment and just really get some good speed and have them go flying, which, I mean, right there, that's a good 15, 20 minutes of entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And that sort of brings me to my first, I guess it's a talking point. The game uses DualShock 4 or Move controllers. And I will say that the controls in this game are a little bit strange.
Yeah.
For two types of controllers that have so many buttons on them, the buttons are wildly underused.
Yes.
I will say that if there are no turn buttons. So even if you're using the DualShock 4, you can't just push the analog stick and move, like you turn to the side or whatever. In fact, you have to turn your body to the side or turn your head to the side to do anything within 90 degrees of either side.
Right.
To do a 180 turn,
click.
A triple click of the move button, which is the strangest decision of all time.
Yes.
And I think on the DualShock 4, you click in L3 or R3.
Okay.
Which is a little bit smarter. It's very strange. And then on top of that, you have to double click one of the face buttons on the move controllers to. You start with one device, which is the thing you were talking about, which sort of lets you grab things. I expect you to die style, and kind of lets you pull things and retract and push them further away and kind of whip them around, like Des was saying. Yeah. And then you get another tool later on, which we probably shouldn't discuss if we don't want to get spoilery.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. There's a cool effect going on when you use it, but I don't want to go more than that.
Right. There's a new way to interact with your environment.
Right. And you have to double click a face button to switch one of your move controllers to that device.
Yes.
It's like, what are we doing here? Why are we triple clicking and double clicking when very simply you could just hit one button to do it? It's an awkward control scheme. Not being able to turn is very strange. And in fact, when I was testing this with the DualShock 4, I ran into some logistical problems. If you're forcing the player to turn to the side while using a DualShock 4, you lose light tracking.
Oh.
It's not fun.
Okay.
So although I think the DualShock 4 actually controls better, this happens, and I say just play with the moves if you have them.
Yeah, I only played it with the moves, and I didn't. I mean, I can see. Yes, it is a very awkward, like triple click to move backwards, but I think the game is designed well enough that not being able to turn like that isn't necessarily that much of a problem. Usually, because mostly what you need is right here, anyways, within that 180 degrees. And I get it. No, I want to be able to move around in the space, and yes, totally fine, and that's a valid criticism. But I also don't think it's truly necessary to enjoy the game. Yeah. So I'm willing to give it a pass on this one.
I'm giving it a pass too, but I will say that keep in mind that if you're one of those people that like hates teleportation, this game is all teleportation. But it does the cool thing where you select the teleportation point and then you kind of zoom toward it instead of just blinking and appearing there. I don't think it's an issue. I think that for a game about virtual reality, it sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like how do you make this virtual world seem more like VR?
And the other thing we should talk about too is, I mean, yes, you're moving around in that space there, but the real thing, and this is where, the other game, this is a mix of, which we should have mentioned at the top, you got your job simulator, you got your Portal, and you got your Accounting Plus.
It's very Accounting Plus.
Because the other way you move around in the worlds is by like multiple layers of VR headsets. Yeah. So there are many times when you'll forget that you're wearing a VR headset, and you can actually, every once in a while just try, like reach up to your face and you can pull off the headsets.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's right. I was, X number of levels deep in the simulations.
Yeah.
Yep.
But when it gets me, I think it's very, very cool to be able to just, pick up a VR headset that's laying in the environment, throw it on your face and be somewhere else, and then being able to rip that off and being back in the environment you were just in. Mm-hmm. When it's extremely jarring, but jarring in maybe the greatest way possible, is sometimes you're ripped out of where you are because you've done something wrong and you're going to be, I guess...
Spoken to
for your actions. You get spoken to a lot in this game for your actions.
Yes, you get spoken to a lot in general.
Yeah. But what it does is it doesn't just rip you out of the virtual world you're in and bring you to your detention cell. It goes boom, 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 boom,
right,
and it rips you through 7 worlds that you've inception through.
Yeah.
And it's so, like I said, jarring in the greatest way possible to just remember, oh, I was there and 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 it's, man, I don't get sick in VR.
Yeah.
And I don't think this would make people sick. But man, what a thrill ride to go through it.
Very cool experience.
You didn't feel nauseous or anything when this was happening?
No,
right?
I never felt any nausea or anything like that.
Good.
It definitely didn't get motion sick, but it is like you said, very jarring. The other thing that happens, and I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler because I think any of the trailers show this, is occasionally there are VR headsets that, let's just say, you don't want to get into that are actually like coming at you.
Right.
And of course, they can use the tracking of your head position. So if you just try to like move, it'll follow you and actually track. And so you find yourself like one of the most disturbing moments I think I've had in gaming was there was a point where one of these was coming at me and without spoilers, I really, really, really didn't want this particular one on me. And I'm sitting there like cowering and dodging in the real world from this headset that's just homing in on my face. Very, very cool.
And all this is done without loading screens, too, which I think is the coolest part of it.
It's one of those things like, soundtracks and movies or special effects. It's one of those things when it's done well, you don't notice it.
Right.
And like, until you point out, like, yeah, there's no loading screens. Like, oh, yeah, there's no loading screens. Yeah. It's like they preload these entire, universes. So you have like all these virtual worlds ready to go before you even load into it. So when you pick up the headset, boom, you're in that world, and it's already preloading all the next ones that you could possibly go to.
Yeah,
which is incredibly cool.
But I think if you're looking at the gameplay footage that we're showing here, it's not terribly surprising that they're able to do it because even though this game has a very cool art style,
yes,
it's very simple. I think the flat shaded polygons and the low poly count of pretty much all the environments. I think they allowed this to happen, but I'm not looking at it as a negative. I think they made this design decision and it worked out great for them.
Yeah, and in fact, there's even one character, the whale, that you kind of interact with later, which I think is one of my favorite levels, where it actually sort of, this is a game where there is a lot of, like, again, we had this discussion, it comes up a lot, like real environmental storytelling. Yep. Not just I found a letter on a desk, but the world itself and the way it's built is telling you what you need to know. Right. And, the whale level is a perfect example. You have a task that you're supposed to accomplish, and by looking around the room, eventually you figure out how to solve the puzzle. And if you're just focused on that, you'll miss an incredibly interesting, like, point of view on the history of graphics development in computers and gaming. And it's just like this really, and it's weirdly sweet too.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing happens over and over again. Yes, there's an artichoke, and the artichoke is saying insane things. And if you just say, okay, the artichoke is saying insane things, oh, the developers are just being funny, I'm going to ignore that and go ahead and solve the puzzle. No, listen.
Yeah.
Right? Listen to what they're telling you, everything you need to know about this world and this story. And there is a deep, interesting, and eventually pretty dark story that's going on that you can and will miss, I think, if you just sort of ignore it and move on.
I will say that all the AI you run into are extremely memorable.
Yes.
Right? They all have like different, I don't want to say different graphical styles because it's all the same graphical style, but atmospherically, each room feels different than the rest, and they all have their own way of speaking to you. And some of them are angry, and some of them are sad and lonely, and it's just all of them are memorable.
Yeah.
And to think I started off and I thought that there was going to be 81 of these, and that's what the whole game was going to be. I was like, oh, it's just a collection of mini games. That was interesting to me. I wanted to check in. I wanted to fill in all those boxes.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've really talked about what happens when the game goes off and separates itself from this, from the implied, from what it implies it's going to be. Like, how do we describe what kind of game this is? It's sort of it sort of becomes a puzzle game.
Oh yeah. No, it's a puzzle-y, adventure-y, kind of point and clicky. The kind of game we like.
Yeah. But it's also, you really have to experiment.
Yes.
Very very few of the puzzles are just, hey, although there is one, hey, here's a key and here's a keyhole. Right. Very few of them are presented that way. Most of them are, here's an environment, and you're like, oh,
yep.
Now what? I don't know. And I actually got, and this is sort of, in my opinion, to the game's detriment.
Yeah.
Because there's a point where you can go to all these different worlds sort of whenever you want to, and you don't know where you have to be or what you have to do to move forward. Unless I missed one of those big, long conversations that one of the AI was delivering to me.
Yeah, I will say a lot of those, I mean, yeah, there are some times where the characters in the world are, I mean, literally screaming at you what to do. But a lot of like kind of long rambling stuff, that's, yeah, if you sit there and like, if you don't know what to do and you sit there listening to them going on and on and on and on and on, that's not really going to help you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to help you fill in the world, fill out the story, but that's not going to be your hint. I will say this, probably the toughest puzzle, it does involve kind of jumping through the different worlds. It's not quite as annoying as Accounting Plus when that does that, because it loads faster and it's not as repetitive. But I will say a hint is, if you keep going through the same cycle, looping over and over again, it's because you missed something in one of the...
And that's something that isn't abundantly clear right away.
Right.
Sometimes you're going through this loop and it feels like you're making progress. Mm-hmm. The game's looping you through and through and through and through, and you get spoken to over and over and over and over. But when you're getting spoken to, the voiceover is different every time.
Yeah.
Like humorously so. And so that makes you think, you're like, oh, I'm making progress. I haven't heard the same dialogue over again. Mm-hmm. And so although it's great that it felt new, it also kept me going in the same loop for way longer than I should have.
And the worst thing is, though, sometimes it is different. And you'll end up in the same scene, and it will be different. And but again, the game, both the puzzle solving and the story wise, it rewards exploration.
Okay.
If you just sit there and if you try to play this like Job Simulator, or play this like, hey, do a thing, I'm going to do I'll do the thing. I did the thing and now I'm done.
Right.
You're not going to get a lot out of this game. And as far as like here's your Des nugget for today. I haven't dusted that off in a while. You mentioned the dialogue. They recorded over 3,000 lines of dialogue for this game.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And it's only about, let's say you don't spend all the time you can fully exploring everything, about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you can definitely balloon that out. There's a lot. I mean, there's entire worlds where we talked about, there was a whole thing that I did in a world that Brian, like, what, you can do that? I was like, absolutely. And it's not a small thing, but it's just because I happen to interact with a very large object, and he didn't. So there's still, it's one of the few like type of puzzle games where I really like, oh, I want to go back and play this again and find all the stuff I missed.
Yeah. I think we need to rate this.
We do. Okay.
So what's our rating scale, Des?
Our rating scale is pretty simple. A 1 is yes. If you have a PSVR, this is going to be in your library. This is just the best of the best with the genre. You need to pick it up. A 2 is, yeah, sure, why not? If it's a genre you particularly like, or if it's on sale at a decent discount, yeah, go ahead, pick it up. And 3 is no. Friends don't let friends buy crap. We need to vote with our wallets and tell developers that we deserve better. So 1, 2, or 3. What do you think?
This is a game that I really wanted to like more than I did. Mm-hmm. That's what I kept thinking the entire time. The voiceovers are really well done. It's mostly one character talking to the entire time. Mostly. There are small snippets of other things going on. But it's really well done, and it's entertaining, and it's kind of funny sometimes. And the controls are interesting, and the way you interact with the world is awesome.
Yeah.
But then maybe the movement isn't really where I wanted it to be. I get stuck more than I care to admit. I feel like this isn't a game that screams, hey, I'm a puzzle game.
Yeah.
But it is. And again, some of the puzzles are just sort of mindless, or sort of, you only come to the solution through experimentation. And if you're just experimenting in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're wasting a lot of time. This is tough because I feel like this is a game that everybody should play. Mm-hmm. And everybody's going to find something about it that's extremely memorable. That being said, I don't think everyone's going to enjoy this game. Like I said, I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to.
Yeah. And
that puts me in a weird place where I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I think the last time I said this was Beyond Two Souls, the David Cage Quantic Dream game. I was like, oh, if you like Heavy Rain, you'll probably like this, but it's not as good. And no, everyone should play it, but no, not everyone's going to like it. And I think that's where I'm at. It's a 2.
Okay.
A ton of people are going to love this, and I think in the comments I'm about to see a lot of hatred for me giving this a 2. I know some people have proclaimed this as their favorite VR game, and I understand that. You're the people this was designed for. I thought this was designed for me, and it's just not. So I have to give it a 2. Luckily, it's on sale right now for $15. I don't think that's a bad price point at all. And if I'm trying to say that everyone should play it, but not everyone will like it, then maybe this is the time to pick it up. That's it. That's my 2 rating. That's
all right. Well, this is something that probably should have mentioned it during the episode, and we go back and forth on this, like whether or not this aspect should be taken into consideration when we judge a game, and that's the size of the team. Okay, Tender Claws started with basically 4 developers, 4 full-time developers with 4 part-time people they pulled on. They put this game together in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, we've talked before, games like Zing, which was fantastic by a small team, but it took them how many years? Like 6 years?
1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So they put this thing together in 6 months, which sounds like it should be this slapdash thrown together, but it's so deep. There's so much going on. Which makes sense when you find out that Samantha Gorman, one of the leads, she, from 2002 to 2010, was part of the VR Art and Writing Research Lab at Brown University called CAVE, and she currently is teaching at Brown and RISD. So she's a local girl. Yay.
Right.
But again, we want to separate, like, well, do we give them a little, plus or minus because it's a smaller team or what? I just wanted to throw that out there. For me, I think this is a 1. I think this is exactly the kind of game I want to play. And not only that, with so many games in VR, it's like the first thing that happens to developers when they see VR is like, oh, wave shooter. Okay. The second thing is, oh, horror game. And the third thing is, oh, meta narrative about virtual reality. Right? Those are it, right?
Yeah, I guess.
This is the first one that I think has something fresh and interesting to say about it. I think this game is just the best of science fiction in that it takes a premise, it brings it into a new, more high-tech environment, and lets us play on what are the consequences of the decisions that we are making now and today.
Yeah.
And so I think for that reason alone, I think anyone who's interested in virtual reality, pro or con, should play this game. Because and this isn't like, it's talking about all the dangers of virtual reality. It's like, no, it talks about all sorts of aspects of the problem. Again, I know I'm being vague here, and I don't want to spoil anything.
For the best, trust us.
Yeah. So I think, like what you said, I think everyone should play this, but I'm going to say it's a 1. It is just a well-made, brilliantly thought-out game. I wish even 10% of the games that we play had this much thought put into what they're saying, what their story is. So Tender Claws, this is a number 1 double plus. If Des did his own top 20, this would definitely be in the top 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is fantastic.
Craziness.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you and I have been very far apart on a lot of games before. This is just one that I think hit us both very differently.
Yeah.
And I have tried over and over to go back into this and look at it from a different perspective multiple times, and it's just not hitting where it should for me.
Right.
But again, I think I'm in the minority, and I think you're probably going to be in the majority.
An artichoke screams at you.
It's right in the PlayStation Store description.
It's in their press release too. That's why.
It's ridiculous. All right, that does it for another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR. As always, we want to know what you thought. What was that? What did that, Bob? Of VVR.
Internally, see that actual noise was his internal rage. It meets agreeing with him.
It's fine.
It comes out as squeaking.
I'm cool. Just wait till October, horror month. It's gonna be great.
Oh God,
we're gonna disagree a lot. So let us know what you thought of VVR in the comments below. Also, what are the games you want us to play? This was one of those games that people have been asking for a review for.
I'm glad you did.
Well, and I think that maybe you're in charge of this review because as someone who maybe enjoyed it more, you can be a little more fair with your final verdict. So maybe expect a shorter review of this soon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. I just gave Des a lot of work. He
Apparently
did not know it was coming. For another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR, I'm Brian Paul.
I'm Desra.
And we'll see you next week.